Dominic Perrottet, congratulations on becoming New South Wales Premier.
Thanks very much, Lee.
I want to whip around a few things since this is your first interview on the program, starting with COVID case numbers. Gladys Berejiklian said that when the state opened, New South Wales could expect case numbers to go through the roof. Case numbers are now lower than anticipated at this point. Are you still planning for a significant spike?
Well, we certainly believe, based on the advice we've received from health, that there'll be naturally an increase in case numbers and hospitalisations as mobility increases across the state. But we think in terms of the success that we've had on the vaccination rate, it's been incredibly pleasing to see the efforts of so many people across our state going out and getting vaccinated. That's really going to help us in relation to hospitalisations and ICU presentations. So we know we're a long way from home. There is substantial challenges coming our way, but we're opening up in a well-measured and conservative way that will ensure people are kept safe, but ultimately as well, we keep people in work and get businesses open.
On climate change, New South Wales, like the other states, is proceeding with its own emissions reduction policies while the federal government works out its targets. Federal Cabinet's meeting on that today. What's your message to federal Cabinet about what you'd like to see on those targets?
Well, we would like them to follow New South Wales's lead. I mean, we've made it very clear that we want to halve those emissions across our state by 2030, and pleasing from our state's perspective here in New South Wales, we haven't had to have any policy change to achieve that goal, and that's testament to the work of our government here in New South Wales. It's led with a whole range of policies from renewable energy zones, particularly in regional New South Wales, to also, our electric vehicles policies, and today we announced a green hydrogen strategy. So I think there is no doubt that this is where the future is. Governments generally are slow when it comes to following where private sector investment is, but I think this is a real opportunity for our state and for our nation to lead the way.
So you want a 50% reduction by 2030. If the federal government doesn't opt for a target that's ambitious, because it's a long way behind that at the moment, does that hinder New South Wales's ability to do what it wants to do in this space?
I don't think so. We're just going to power ahead. We announced our decision to halve emissions by 2030, and today announced our hydrogen policy. And that's not just going to be great for the environment, but it's going to be important for jobs. And from a state government's perspective, Lee, we want to make sure that we're delivering the services that people need today, but we've got to have the vision for the future. And the best way of doing that is making investments today. We've made a $3 billion investment that we believe will leverage up to $270 billion in private sector investment, create tens of thousands of jobs. And the reality is this is not a move, we're not saying we're against fossil fuels. What we're saying is that inevitably, over time, we are going to move to a renewable future. That's where the world is going. And those governments that move and invest today will be the ones that have an economic edge going forward. And I know that there might be big numbers here, but ultimately that provides opportunity and prosperity for our young people to have the jobs of the future. And I think it was a great decision today by the government. And I think if the federal government looks to the future as well, they will also see the opportunity that provides Australia moving forward.
On the current ICAC investigation, should Gladys Berejiklian have disclosed her relationship with Daryl Maguire to her colleagues sooner?
Look, Lee, obviously that investigation is ongoing. There are public hearings that have been announced today in relation to that matter. I think as Premier of the state, it would be completely inappropriate for me to provide a commentary on those matters. I'm unsure of the details. Obviously, I've seen what you've seen in the public domain. Obviously, I'll see what comes out of those hearings, and once those revelations come to light, then I'll comment on them then. But
you're
I just think in my role.
Sorry, Premier, you're the leader of the government though, and you would have standards that you expect from your ministers. If you had somebody on your team that was engaged in a relationship like that, would you expect it to be disclosed?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the Premier's made previous comments in relation to the fact that she did not believe that the relationship was of a sufficient standard that would meet the disclosure of interest requirements for government in those meetings, such as the Expenditure Review Committee. But I haven't obviously discussed the matter with the former Premier because we're not entitled to speak about those matters that are currently before the ICAC.
Are you planning any kind of reforms to clip ICAC's wings?
No. I mean, I think the Integrity Agency has an important role in ensuring corruption is out of public life. But that doesn't mean, though, from time to time reforms to every part of the government here in New South Wales shouldn't be looked at. But if there are ways in which we can strengthen independent oversight in whatever area it is, I think that's a positive thing.
People say that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. As the state's finance minister, you set up a workers' compensation scheme called iCare. And last year it was found to have lost more than $3 billion, as well as cutting benefits to thousands of injured workers. You declined to be interviewed for a review into it. If that's an indication of your competence and your preparedness to be accountable, how well does it bode for your performance as Premier?
Well, I think in relation, I mean, you've chosen one aspect there, Lee, in relation to the workers' compensation scheme in New South Wales. I think, as I've said very clearly in relation to that scheme, the reform was the right thing to do. When I was finance minister, the scheme is in a much better place than it was before. Now, could the implementation have been better? Absolutely. I've said that on numerous occasions, but when you look at the range of measures of what makes for a good workers' compensation scheme, it's in a much better place today. Now, when you're setting up state-owned corporations, or in this case a public financial corporation, there'll obviously be cultural changes and mistakes were clearly made. But I do believe the reform was right. I think the opposition and many people have not said moving down that path was not the right course. Should the implementation have been better? Absolutely, it should have been. Should there be greater ministerial oversight? Yes. And there's been a number of recommendations as part of a statutory review, which we'll look at. Naturally, there's a balance when you set up a public financial corporation, as we saw with Australia Post. There's obviously there's these natural debates. You know, should the Prime Minister have got involved with Australia Post? Should a finance minister get involved with a public financial corporation? They're challenging questions. But do I believe the reform was the right thing to do? I stand by that. Could I have ensured that implementation was better? Absolutely.
Dominic Perrottet, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.